Most of the haunted paintings that puzzled the world were either hanging in galleries or out of sight. However, people claim that owning copies or prints of them, or even looking at them, can cause unease and a sense of fear that cannot be explained, perhaps because behind each painting is a secret that people have not known anything about until now. And the most prominent of these paintings are the following. The Anguished Man. Some paintings become stories resembling mythological tales, with mysterious details rumored around them, but they indicate the artist's great creative ability to express an event, story or theme. One of the most famous of these paintings is one that has been raised about great controversy, entitled The Anguished Man, which is by an unknown artist, and many strange tales have been attributed to it, showing a man suffering and writhing in pain, opening his mouth as if making painful sounds, and the painting was owned by a man named Sean Robinson, who mentioned that when he was young and living in his grandmother's house, he found a scary painting that the grandmother was hiding and accumulating fabrics and curtains over it, so that no one would see it. Robinson wanted to know the secret of the painting, so he asked about it. So the grandmother was confused and sullen, and did not want to talk about it, and under the urging of Robinson, she explained that a close friend of hers had gifted her that painting years ago, and stated that she felt a severe contraction when she saw it and tried to return it to her friend, but the latter refused to restore it, which increased the degrees of curiosity when the grandmother who tried to learn about the secret of the drawing. So she went to a specialist in painting and told her that the painting is for an unknown artist who had mixed his blood in the colors used in the painting, and that he committed suicide a few days after finishing it. Years passed, and after Robinson grew up, he returned to take a look at the house after the grandmother's death and put her house up for sale, where he remembered the painting, and despite the fear he felt, he decided to carry it with him to his house. Robinson put the painting in the basement of the house. Then strange things began to happen, similar to groans and screams, and Robinson noticed that his dog began to avoid entering the basement, and Stan panicked if he approached him. One day heavy rain flooded the basement, so Robinson lifted the painting to the house and placed it in a closed room, but he was surprised by the sounds of terrifying screams and stated that he and his family members began to see spectra moving, going up to the house. One day Robinson's little girl fell down the stairs, feeling very scared, and told her father that a hand had reached out and pushed her, and that led to her falling. Here, Robinson decided to discover the secret of the painting, so he returned it again to the basement and put it under the surveillance of the cameras to discover strange things. So he heard strange sounds and saw that the vault door opens and closes alone, so he decided to know the history of the painting and think about how to get rid of it, so that his family members do not suffer harm from it. He tried to burn it, but one of them advised him not to do so for fear that the unexpected would happen, and gossip abounded about the painting. No one wants to own it, and some pointed out it has evil spirits, and its mystery remains mysterious to this day. The Crying Boy painting, also called the painting Gypsy Boys, a painting created by the Italian plastic artist Bruno Amadio, who is known as Giovanni Bragolin. This painting is very famous for its expressions and feelings of mercy and compassion for the child's sad navigator and tearful eyes, and he made a lot of similar copies of young boys and girls crying. The Crying Boy painting, also called the painting Gypsy Boys, a painting created by the Italian plastic artist Bruno Amadio, who is known as Giovanni Bragolin. This painting is very famous for its expressions and feelings of mercy and compassion for the child's sad navigator and tearful eyes, and he made a lot of similar copies of young boys and girls crying. The story of the painting begins when the painter Bruno Amadio roaming the streets of Madrid in 1969, and while walking he heard the sound of intermittent crying. So he went to the source of the sound and saw a boy wearing old clothes sitting outside one of the nearby boxes crying. So Amadio called on the boy and asked him if there was a problem. The boy looked at him while he was silent, and his tears were shedding. Amadio took pity on him and took him with him and fed him and painted him a portrait, and then the boy became visiting him a lot and painted him many paintings. And the strange thing is that in all the child's visits to the painter, Amadio was also crying and does not speak, and this explains the other copies that Giovanni painted for the child while crying. After a short time, Giovanni visited a priest who seemed confused as he saw the picture of the child and told him that his name was Benello and the reason for the child's crying. is that his house was exposed to the fire and saw his father with his own eyes charring from the fire to death. So the child roamed the streets crying all the time. He advised the priest Giovanni not to help the child more than that because wherever he went the fire broke out in his wake. And after hearing Giovanni's advice, priest felt terrified how a cleric to advise him to stop helping an orphan and weak child, and therefore did not take the advice of the priest and adopted the child, and in that period became drawing him a lot of portraits and displayed his drawings in Europe until he became one of the most famous wealthy because of these paintings. The painter and the child lived a decent and blissful life until Giovanni returned once to his home and found him burned. Giovanni lost all his paintings except for the paintings of the crying child. Giovanni accused the child of deliberately burning his house, but the child ran away from home and no longer sees Giovanni or knows anything about him. In 1976, it was reported in the news about a major car accident that occurred in Barcelona, as the driver of the car collided in a concrete wall for his speed in driving. So the car burned and the driver died inside, and his features were distorted, so he no longer knows his identity. But part of the driver's license was found, which turned out to be a 19-year-old young man whose name was Don Bonello, and after a while many press reports appeared about strange fire incidents in Europe. And it was not found in the records the death of a young man in the name of Bonillo in a car accident, nor even about a house fire in the name of Bruno Amadio or Giovanni Bragulin. So there are many gossip and legends regarding this painting, especially that Giovanni Bragulin painted many paintings in the name of the painting of the crying child, and the children were different bodies and different ages, and Bonello may be one of these firefighters. The legend of the painting began when the British newspaper Sunday reported that there are some children's men mentioned that all the houses that burned and contained this painting charred, except for the painting itself, and many people believed that the child's soul was hovering around the painting and believed this novel. So they got rid of the painting for fear of a fire in their homes. But some explain the secret of the survival of the crying child paintings from fire accidents are the materials from which the paintings were made, as usually when huge copies of certain paintings are printed on strong surfaces, and the crying child paintings were made of pressed panels that are difficult to ignite, which explains the non-burning of the paintings in the houses that were burning. This painting by John Henry Fuseli may be familiar to some, as it has appeared in many films, horror series, and police dramas were considered innovative works of art at the time, as they depicted a woman wearing white clothes and sleeping on a bed in a room with dark red curtains. Immediately above the woman's chest, an ugly-looking creature with fixed looks crouches, resembling a ghoul. To the left of the room we see another black-colored, strange-looking creature resembling a horse, staring at the woman with eyes shining in the darkness. Despite the ugliness of the monster's features and strange appearance, it does not appear to be in a position of peace. He tries to harm or insult the woman, but the closest thing to this is when he is thinking and contemplating. The image of the two monsters appearing in the painting may have been inspired by the artist from the ancient books mentioned stories about creatures with semi-human bodies, folklore, medicine, and the popular imagination prevalent at the time. The artist used it in a painting charged with terror and anticipation. There are those who say that the woman in the painting is none other than the artist's mistress, with whom he had fallen in love when he was living in Zurich. But what is important is that the painting The Nightmare has achieved great success ever since it was shown for the first time in 1982 AD. It was so popular that Fuseli had to draw up a number of copies. At the request of some of his clients, Fuseli's painting has remained the subject of many different interpretations and readings by psychologists who saw it as a fertile topic for their theories and efforts, and some of them saw it is an embodiment of a desire that has not been satisfied, while others saw it as a manifestation of jealousy, in which the woman's lover turns into a monster lurking under the weight of his feeling of hatred and tendency for revenge. His most famous paintings are The Nightmare, The Witches 3 and A Dream at His Death. John Henry Fuseli left behind about 6 Lri, and the themes of his paintings are very similar to the themes of the paintings of his contemporary, the artist and poet William Blake, and Fuseli, born in Switzerland, but spent most of his life in Britain. Please support us by pressing the like button and follow us to receive everything new. Wait for the next